Without further ado, please give a warm Georgia Tech welcome to Andy Perlmutter.
So, most businesses today, a normal C Corp or a small business corp, okay, is focused on maximizing profitability and shareholder value. Even in the bylaws, you're committed to delivering on that commitment. So let's look at a hybrid model and see where the difference is to start laying some foundation. So on the hybrid model, the chain of collaborative activities, both private and social sector partners, along which products pass and gain economic and social value, more value than any one actor could have created alone. So it's a collaborative effect, working together to deliver an increase in value. The dynamic of including multiple perspectives to develop business solutions, fix broken value chains, and scale innovations to solve major social problems. And the new framework under which business will be successful in the markets of the future, and one that leaves a legacy of sustained social value and sources of profits, both. The pursuit in this realm of a social enterprise is to maximize total stakeholder impact. And for a lot of you, you've heard it referred to as a triple bottom line, or people, planet, and profit. Okay? Lots of different ways to phrase that, but it really comes down to economic, social impact, and profitability and sustainability from a business perspective. Marrying them all together to make sure that you're balancing the interests of all the stakeholders who are playing in that mix. Not necessarily an easy thing to do, but when you get it right, okay, you really have the opportunity, as you'll see in a little bit, to impact people, planet, and profit in unique ways and dynamic ways that deliver on behalf of all the stakeholders. So, let me give you some hard facts. 89% of consumers say they would be likely to switch from one brand to another when price and quality are about equal, if the other brand is associated with a good cause. It's hard to get people to switch brands. We all get used to things. If you think about the habits and the products that we use, it's hard to get you to switch. But if 89% of the people say that they understand, okay, that their values and the values of the company are in alignment, they're willing to make that switch. But there's a key caveat up here. You see that line that price and quality are about equal? There's only about 20% of the population that's willing to pay more for that privilege. And so when you're in a social enterprise, one of the things you don't want to do is assume that because you have that values alignment, you can charge a premium and people will still come to you. You've got to find a way to deliver all of that alignment at a quality product, at a compelling price, or it's still not licensed. 89% of consumers state it's very or somewhat important to know about the values of the companies they come in contact with through buying products. So you need to educate. 90% of consumers want companies to tell them the ways that they're supporting causes. 61% of which, or 2/3 roughly, of which think companies need to give more details about their efforts. So people really want to know. They want to learn. We're all on our phones doing research, okay, or Googling this, or running a search engine on that. We all want to understand. We want clarity around the good. 33% of Hispanics and African American consumers report that they almost always will choose a brand that supports a cause they believe in, compared to 1 in 5 non-white, non-Hispanic whites. So this is a movement that's really touching all aspects of our society. Globally, 66% of people believe it's no longer enough for corporations to merely give money away, but they must integrate good causes in their day-to-day business. Okay, so walk the walk. Okay, it's easy to write a check. You'll find as you go on with your career, okay, it's easier sometimes to write a check than really dedicate yourself to that initiative. Okay, people understand when it's genuine, and they reward it when it's genuine. Behavioral research demonstrates 78% increase in actual purchases when cause marketing is used to or in merchandising and promotions. Okay, and you'll see as we start talking about Federal World Books, how that plays out in reality, because it's an important part of what you do to make sure that you're communicating effectively with the consumers who are looking for a values-aligned solution. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Benefit Corp or B Corp movement. Okay, it's really a new sector that is taking hold, and more states are adopting B Corp legislation. As a matter of fact, as of now, we've got 12 corporations that actually recognize benefit corporations, and 14 who are in the works, including here in Georgia. Okay, if we go back just a few years, it was a dream. And we've had slow adoption initially, and now it's starting to really take hold. And it is a purpose-driven entity, okay, that actually changes its articles of incorporation in order to focus on stakeholders rather than just shareholders. I think sometimes people don't realize that as a normal corporate entity, your obligation is the interests of the shareholders, almost to an exclusion of all else. So if I have the ability legally to dump waste in a stream, okay, and it's cheaper to do so as a normal C corporation, okay, I almost have the obligation to dump it in that stream. As a benefit corporation, you change those articles in service to stakeholders, and that gives you license to take all of people, planet, and profit into consideration when making decisions. And some of those decisions may go against the shareholder, like making sure that that is disposed of wisely at a much higher cost than it would have been to have dumped it into the stream. To be a B Corp, you have to meet a higher standard. You have to expand your corporate responsibility, and it helps us collectively amplify our voice. There are 681 B Corps as of today, 24 countries, 60 industries with one unifying goal. Okay, and the important part is, and I'm going to take a moment to read something to you. It's a declaration that all of us B corporations have to pretty much live, not just agree to, but live in our daily lives. It's a declaration of interdependence. We envision a new sector of the economy which harnesses the power of private enterprise to create public benefit. The sector is comprised of a new type of corporation, which is purpose-driven and creates benefit for all stakeholders and not just shareholders. As members of this emerging sector, as entrepreneurs and investors, we hold these truths to be self-evident. That we must be the change we seek in the world, that all business ought to be conducted as if people and place matters, that through the products, practices, and profits, business should aspire to do no harm and benefit all. To do so requires that we act with the understanding that we are each dependent upon another and thus responsible for each other and future generations. It's a little bit different philosophy, not the norm that you see today when people make decisions in business. But 681 corporations, 24 countries, 60 industries, okay, are truly redefining what value means. These are some of the corporations. I'm sure some of them are household names you're very familiar with, others maybe not. But more and more are becoming B corporations. Patagonia became a B corporation about a year ago. Okay, Ben & Jerry's just became a B corporation about 4 months ago. Okay, so Etsy within the last 6 months. So the movement is really a strong movement taking hold, okay, as you folks get out of school. It'll be getting its stride for many of you. And it's a tremendous opportunity to build something and get involved with something you can truly be proud of. If we think this is just a passing fancy, I had the occasion to be at the White House back in September, okay, to participate in a business innovation council entitled Integrating Values into the Value Chain. And we had 3 cabinet members who participated. And the Department of Treasury and the Small Business Administration, GSA, actually are the ones who sponsored this gathering. Okay? We participated along with some of the same companies you saw a little while ago. And this was all about how to create jobs in this new sector. and how to solve social problems through corporate innovation, not nonprofits, not government support. This was not a session on how government can give money out in order to get solve problems in society. This was about how commerce can be leveraged through social enterprise and through impact in order to make a difference in society. Tremendous, tremendous opportunity. I think tremendous focus on the part of the White House more recently. And I think you'll find that all that support, B corporations, White House support, states like Georgia looking at adopting benefit corp legislation, all are laying the foundation for a different kind of business. So we're now going to take a look at Better World Books and our legacy of growth and impact as a case study. Okay, so feel free to write down your questions along the way, and we'll make sure that we get to them. But it's been a pretty dynamic background. So our vision has been, over our 10-year history, and continues to be, to bring together socially and environmentally conscious constituency groups looking to align their decisions and behaviors with their value systems. That's a growing population. I showed information from the Cone study, the 2010 Cone study up there, before we were going through some of the facts. These 88 and 89% and 90% readbacks, okay, that say that people want to align their purchasing with their value systems, only 10 years ago and 12 years ago were more like 60%. So the momentum is clearly there. And we've been around for 10 years and have seen the change. This has been the vision from day one, continues to be the vision today. We were founded by 3 Notre Dame grads, by the way, those are all Red Bull, okay? And we were founded by 3 Notre Dame grads who, to be quite frank with you, probably stumbled across the idea, okay? They'll admit it. I just had the opportunity to go back with them to Notre Dame and talk to the folks at Notre Dame in a session very similar to this. And they really just were looking to get rid of textbooks at a time where they went to the bookstore and the bookstore was offering them very little. They paid a lot of money to get them at the beginning of the semester. At the end of the semester, you know, as often is the case, they were looking for some money to go out and enjoy the end of the semester. Okay, they went back to the bookstore with the books and they offered them a fraction of what they had paid for them at the beginning of the semester. So they went online at the time that these online marketplaces were coming around, like Amazon. At that time, it was half.com. And they realized that, wow, we can sell these textbooks. Instead of getting back $12 at the bookstore, we were selling these textbooks back that we paid $60 for at the beginning of the semester for $55. Okay, and all of a sudden, a light bulb went off. Maybe we don't have to work so hard. Maybe we don't have to go out and get a job. Okay, and so next thing you know, they were taking everybody in the dorms textbooks that they could get their hands on and doing the same thing. And they said, we may be able to turn a business, turn this into a real legitimate business. So they actually went to a local learning center and literacy center. And they had a passion for literacy. And they said, I'll tell you what, if you give us some room in your back room, okay, for us to store books, then we'll go out and we'll run book drives and we'll collect the books and then we'll sell them online and we'll give you half and we'll take half. And Better World Books was born. Okay? And to date, we continue to support that literacy center in South Bend, Indiana. And it's been a tremendous relationship for us. But you'll see that as we look at our impact over the years, it's grown well beyond local impact in South Bend, Indiana. Why literacy? Natural question. 776 million adults are illiterate. 2/3 of them women. 1/7 of the planet. Africans over 40%. Asians 45%. Interesting statistics. 60% of American prison inmates are illiterate. 85% of juvenile offenders have serious reading problems. The state of Arizona projects how many prison beds it will need based on a test given in the 3rd grade and the percentage of 3rd graders that don't read at the 4th grade level or above. Okay? So that's why literacy. Literacy is not just about the ability to read, but it's really about learning. It's about respect, opportunity, development, pride, sense of worth, okay? Literacy is a critical component to your ability to take care of yourself and to take care of your family. And that's why we are so focused on literacy. We sit there and we explore, should it be education, should it be this, should it be that? And we stick true to literacy because we think it's the fundamental underpinning of being able to spread your wings and be a contributing member of society, whatever that society. So we're going to talk a little bit about collaborating. But you'll see over here, I'm going to start with sharing the book. Okay, we collect books from just about everybody who has books. You know, there's an age-old saying, I think it was Dillinger, who said, when asked why he robbed banks, he said, that's where the money is. Okay? And so we have taken it upon ourselves to try and find every place where there are books. Doesn't matter where they are. They're in libraries. We work with over 3,000 library systems. They're on college campuses. We run book drives on over 1,300 college campuses every semester. They're at retail stores. Okay? We work with just about every retail chain and many retail independents across the country to liquidate their surplus inventory. Okay? They're in textbook rental houses. Some of you rent your textbooks. Okay? They send us their surplus inventory, or when a new edition comes out and they can't rent that anymore, we'll liquidate that for them. Publishers, end of runs, wholesalers, we're down to the last 4 or 5 copies and they're not moving so fast. They all turn to us to liquidate their books. Okay? Now, what does that do? It allows us to take end-of-life product and give it a new life. When you read a book and you complete that opportunity, that experience, okay, a lot of us take those books, we put them on our shelves. Okay, we put them in boxes. Hopefully we're advanced beyond that, or lending them to friends. That's a great thing. Okay? But it doesn't, the life of that book hasn't ceased to exist. It's just run its course with you. So we ask all of the folks in all of the groups that have books, we say, give that book a new life and allow us to utilize that book to do good across the globe. Today, we secure and process about 125,000 books each and every day, to give you an idea of scale. And by the time we finish this year, that number will be more like 265,000 books each and every day. Okay? And we're dependent upon the community to give us those books. And what we do is we take those books and we process them with our technology and automation in our warehouse in order to determine what we can sell, what we can donate, and we donate across the globe. Okay, this year alone, we'll donate nearly 4 million books, okay, to all kinds of causes, and we ship them in concert with folks like Books for Africa over to Africa. We move them across over to Asia with Room to Read, and across the United States into every continent with our partners, with our literacy partners. And the objective is to make sure these books get a new life. If a book is not in condition to be read, or maybe it's that John Grisham novel that sold millions of copies, and you know what, now it's a 1.5 years old, and it's kind of run its course, and nobody really, we know we can only sell 10 of those a day, but we see maybe as many as 200 or 300 a day. Okay, we'll pulp those books. And then we give a portion of every sale of a book, pulp, every dollar that we take in, a portion goes to support a literacy initiative, again, across the globe, including grants to libraries here domestically and in other countries, support of after-school programs in underprivileged areas of Oakland, California, and some of our major cities. There are all kinds of literacy programs that we support proudly across the globe. The objective is to monetize what we can monetize, because a portion of those proceeds goes to literacy. If we can't, to donate it. And we have technology that takes in donation requests and sorts them based on the needs. Could be an after-school program where there are children's books up to 6th grade. It could be a preschool program where they're of preschool age. It could be a senior citizen center. Okay, and we have technology that actually takes the request and profiles the request, and then automatically sets aside those books that meet those profiles. So we want to repurpose them. They're not in condition again, we want to recycle. So we're going to talk about the concept of collaborative consumption at work. We talk about collaborating, we all come together to do our best to reuse, okay, and repurpose and give more life. Okay? This is really a societal shift away from hyper-consumption. So we went through this era of gimme, 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 everything is throwaway. We fill up our landfills, okay, and we do a great job, by the way, of supporting the real estate market. You know what the fastest growing part of the real estate market has been for nearly 10 years now? Mini storage. Okay, 1 in 10 households today has a mini storage unit. Never mind all the basements and garages that are filled with stuff, because we keep buying stuff. Stuff that we may not need anymore, but we don't like to part with. But there's this tremendous opportunity to serve good with that stuff. Okay? Some of the logical things are, hey, I had a baby, I had a baby seat in my car, okay? Baby's not a baby anymore, still have the seat. There's an opportunity. It starts there, but it's throughout. You think about just about everything. I think one of the things that there's a book out there called What's Mine is Yours / Ours, okay? And a great example was a drill. And I relate to that because I probably have 3 of them, because every time I need one, I can't find one, right? And nobody buys a drill to have a drill. They buy a drill to make a hole, right? Well, I buy a drill to make a hole. My neighbor buys a drill to make a hole. Well, what's the likelihood that I and my neighbor are looking to make a hole at the same time? Probably pretty much non-existent, okay? And so why don't I go to my neighbor and say, rather than us both have a drill, I'll buy the drill, you can borrow it when you need to. By the way, I've never seen us blow leaves at the same time, so why don't you buy the leaf blower and I'll borrow it when I need it, okay? Think about Craigslist. Think about all these environments that have popped up in recent times that are collaborative in nature. Something has run its course, I don't need it anymore. We have an environment in which you can use it. So it's all about redistribution, sharing, gifting, swapping. Okay, all these opportunities are collaborative consumption opportunities. Better World Books has a 10-year legacy of bringing community and consumers together for the benefit of society through collaborative consumption. It's not necessarily anything that's just come about, but it's become more formal. Okay? Any of you who have brothers or sisters who are older than you may have hand-me-downs. It's collaborative consumption in the most simple state. For us, it's collaborative with libraries. We get from libraries, we give back to libraries. College campuses, same thing. Publishers, wholesalers, retailers, there's all this opportunity. So I get books in from Barnes & Noble, okay, and we sell those. And then I repurpose books into Barnes & Noble, because what people buy online sometimes is different than what they buy in a bricks and mortar environment. So I can take their surplus inventory, and they can monetize my surplus inventory, do a lot of good by creating that value chain. BWB offers tremendous value. We sell across 53 channels to over 200 countries. In any given week, we're shipping to 200 countries, selling on over 53 channels. Many, believe it or not, in non-English speaking countries. Okay? So there's huge opportunity to make this world a smaller place. We deliver back to our communities in the form of donations we talked about, funding, okay? Lots of ways we can touch. Along with our partners, we successfully integrate values into the value chain, okay, and create a really sustainable ecosystem. We have gotten books that we have sold, we know from the labeling on the books, that we've gotten in used, we've sold the books, they end up in a Dropbox of ours. Some of you have seen our green Dropboxes hopefully around, okay? Or a textbook, okay, and we get it back in a book drive, and we can sell that book many, many times over. To date, we've raised about $13.5 million for literacy, over $5 each and every minute of each and every day, 365 days a year. We're approaching $6 a minute. We'll probably be at $6 a minute by the time we get to the end of January. We're real excited about that. And we've donated more than 7 million books, and it's accelerating. So I mentioned earlier, we'll donate about 4 million this year alone. And so as we get bigger, every one of these pieces allows us to have more and more impact across society. We have 300 plus full-time employees. 100% receive stock options once they're with us a year, because that's our commitment to people. We have driven our company as far as we have, and we'll talk about our scale in a few minutes, and yet we've only had one capital raise in our history, relatively small, about $4 million, okay? And 85% of our stock is owned by our original three founders and our employees. Pretty good place to be for a company that's 10 years in, having gotten to our scale. We offer everyone very affordable health care insurance. So for an individual, it's about $20 a week. We offer everybody 401k plans and other benefits because that's our commitment to our people. And today we maintain locations in Alpharetta, our processing centers in Mishawaka, and we also have an additional processing and distribution center in Edinburgh, Scotland. We tell the impact story in this way. So when we look at it, okay, 190,000 cubic yards of landfill space not taken because we have kept those books out of there. We buy carbon offsets so that the entirety of our operation is carbon neutral. When we look at the pounds of media recycled, 435,000 pounds. Okay, books recycled, pounds of books recycled, kilowatts of energy saved, nearly 740 million gallons of water saved. And we live by these metrics, and they're independently audited. Okay, because we think it's our obligation, and it clearly is our mission and our commitment to pay attention to these issues. We maybe could do some things that might be cheaper for us, but that wouldn't be consistent with who we are and our commitment both as a B Corp and as a social enterprise. So let me talk to you a little bit about the profit side, because everybody thinks that you do all these things and you can't possibly do all these things and be a really good, tight company. Our year-over-year revenue growth rate this year, our fiscal year ends in June, so we're a little over halfway through, will be 16% year-over-year revenue growth. Pretty good number. Our earnings growth is 112% year-over-year. Our margin growth is 84% year-over-year. And as we finish this fiscal year, our run rate will be 40% over last fourth quarter. Okay? All this, by the way, while we're delivering 51% capitalized annual growth over the last 10 years of our history. And as you can see here, we're right here. We restructured our company right in here, okay, to get back to some of our core. We got a little bit away from some of our roots of used books and got a little more into new books, which didn't deliver well for us, so we restructured in here. Okay, this is where we are, and this is where we're going, without any acquisitions, all organic. Let me remind you, 85% employee owned. We raised $4 million. It's the only raise we've ever done. And by the way, other than buying our building this past year, 300,000 square foot building in South Bend, we have zero debt. So you don't have to take my word for it. Let's take a look at some of the recognition that we've received. On the People and Planet side, Literacy Leadership Award from the National Coalition for Literacy. The Green Jobs Award for 2011, which was presented in concert with the White House. The EPA Awards in 2009, the Gold Award for Paper Reduction, 2010, the Gold Award in Climate Change. For 2011, we were the Partner of the Year for the EPA, which is the highest award you can receive. On the website Good, we were named one of the 30 places we want to work, ranked number 11. Leading the movement, social enterprise, impact. Business school study cases have been done by Kellogg, Tufts School of Business at Dartmouth and Harvard, and we're currently doing one right now with the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School of Business. Most promising social entrepreneur, we were named by Business Week. Time Magazine named us one of the top 25 responsibility pioneers. Fast Company named us as a Social Capitalist Award winner. And Just Means gave us the Social Innovation Awards of both the Citizen's Choice and Best Social Investment Strategy. But we did that while being named one of the top e-retailers, okay, for 2010, 11, and 12. We're now number 250. We're proud of that. We were named by Business Insider as the world's most valuable startup, one of the world's most valuable startups, excuse me. Inc. 5,000 named us for 3 years, 2009, 11, and 12, as one of the fastest growing private companies. And here in Georgia, we were named to the Georgia's Fast 40 by Georgia Trend Magazine, one of the fastest growing private companies or companies here in the state of Georgia. So not only are we attempting to do good, but we're being recognized on all of People, Planet, and Profit. We balance it quite nicely and deliver exceptional returns. I mentioned the one investment that we had, about $4 million, okay, from a company that was mission aligned, from an organization that was mission aligned, a private equity firm called Good Capital. And we actually have, as many private equity arrangements have, okay, that's a 5-year investment and it comes due this coming year. We'll return over a 300% return over that 5 years. So in our world, we kind of have a saying that we stick pretty closely to. Okay, it's an African proverb that says, "For tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today." I don't know how many of you are seniors, but before you know it, you're going to be out there in that world, okay? And it's going to be really tempting and really easy to go after jobs that may pay a little bit more, or do a little bit of this, or do a little bit of that, or seem to have a little better horizon. I will tell you that tomorrow belongs to you, okay? I have 3 children, one who's a senior at the other Georgia school over in Athens, I think it is. And 2 daughters who graduated the University of Alabama. And I know what it's like when you go out there in that world. It's not necessarily easy, okay? But there are lots of opportunities to align yourself with something that you feel really, really good about. Tomorrow belongs to you, okay? A lot more than you recognize. And it's your job to carry this type of legacy forward. I assure you, with our growth, we're always looking for great people who are committed and hardworking. We pay very competitive rates, and social enterprise doesn't necessarily pay any less, by the way. We don't. We benchmark all of our jobs against the market, and we pay where we need to pay within that market range in order to secure the best talent we can get, okay? You want to own tomorrow. You want to make a difference. And so I want to challenge you to do what our 3 founders did, Jeff, Xavier, and Chris, back 10 years ago, when they decided to get innovative, okay, but to get innovative with their community, with something they were passionate about, that made a difference to them in their lives. Because I will tell you that as a result of that, okay, our business is what it is. I'm not so sure we'd even be alive today if we didn't take that path. I call them our forefathers, but for me they're kind of our 4 children, okay, hadn't taken that path. So I invite you to affect tomorrow, okay, prepare for it today and commit to it as we move forward. So with that, if I may, I'd like to open it up to some Q&A.
What we're going to do is we have a microphone each side of the room, and if you have a question, just flag us down and we'll bring you the mic. Before this, I just have a question about B Corps. So we talked a lot about B Corps at the beginning. You talked about the legal significance of, there's 12 states that recognize B Corps. Are you talking about legal in the context of like subchapter S type corps that have tax benefits, or 501c which have tax benefits? To my knowledge, B corps don't have any real tax benefits. Is that?
Yeah, there's no tax benefit to being a benefit corporation.
So what is the legal aspect?
The legal aspect actually recognizes the modification to your articles of incorporation and allows you to go forward in service to more than just your shareholder. Interesting, I mentioned Craigslist a little bit earlier, but there's a famous law or case involving Craigslist in which an early investor in Craigslist sued because they wanted to accept a later investment at a lower valuation that was mission aligned with their purpose, but did not serve in the interest of that shareholder, okay? And that shareholder prevailed, okay? And with benefit corp legislation out there, we can stop that type of thing from happening. It's not all about money. It's about, as we know, it's about total impact and total stakeholder impact.
I think there's a question in the middle.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kira Andrews. I'm a senior business administration major concentrating in IT. It seems that these days Americans kind of expect their corporations to benefit society and benefit the community, but how does that translate into the international consumers? Are they actually, is there a vast amount of consumers internationally who are expecting these B corporations and who would switch brands just because they benefit society? And what do you think the future of that is?
Great question. We have a facility in the UK. I go over to the UK about 3 or 4 times every year, and I love to spend time out and meet with the folks we serve. And I will tell you that my impression is that the United Kingdom is further along in that regard in alignment than we are here. I think that it is a global issue. I've spoken to folks in China, very, very concerned with the environment over in China. Social enterprise in China is a rapidly expanding movement. So it's clearly not just the United States movement. And if anything, we're probably a little bit behind in many regards. The category of benefit corporation is not the only way to be a social enterprise, right? And so B Corps are a wonderful thing. The movement is terrific. The folks who founded B Lab are very, very passionate. They're moving very quickly and make a difference and pave the way for us. We're a founding B Corp member. But social enterprise and impact investing and impact organizations, I think, are taking root everywhere you turn. And I've interacted with folks in Africa who are social enterprises, who are doing some really creative things. So yeah, I think that it's a movement that's here to stay. I think that it is global. And although the first component of what you said is that people expect that of their corporations, I think you'd be surprised at how much people overlook when it comes to truly making decisions versus sometimes having a conversation.
Sure. You mentioned the 3 Ps, people, planet, and profits. I was just wondering, at what level of trade-off do you use the 3 Ps? For example, not necessarily spending $1 billion to save 1 tree or a book. So, to what extent is people, planet, and profit exceeding one as compared to the other 3 Ps or 2 Ps?
Yeah, I think that we deal with that all the time, and every decision we sit there and weigh it and sometimes have some pretty heated debate about some of these things. But the good thing for us is that our social impact is embedded into our business model, right? So a portion of every dollar is automatic. It's not off the bottom line, it's off the top line. So even if we're losing money, our contracts, our commitments to our supply chain for books. So if we did a campus book drive here at Georgia Tech, okay, we have made a commitment that a portion of those proceeds, typically 5% of those proceeds, are going to a literacy partner, okay? 5% as a starter. In certain instances, it's 5% plus an additional 10%. So in libraries, for example, there's 10% that's earmarked for libraries and another 5% for a not necessarily specific, but library designated literacy partner. So it's as much as 15% of the revenue, not of the earnings. And so that's the easy component. The issue of what do? I could, in many instances, not donate a book, okay? And I can pulp that book, and I'll get paid to pulp that book. But for me to donate that book costs me money, because I have to set it aside, I have to box it, containerize it, and then I have to ship it. So it has a negative impact on my business to donate that book, but a positive impact to pulp that book, pulp the book. That's not true to our mission. Our mission is, if we have someone that wants that book, we consider it an obligation to put that book in their hands. It's non-negotiable. Okay, and so if you set up your rule structure and inside of your business model in the right way, then you make sure that you manage to be able to do all those things and deliver a market competitive profit. Otherwise, you're not going to have the capital potentially that you need to grow. Okay, then those decisions kind of fall out of the process. Now, where it becomes a little bit different for us, we just made a decision not too long ago to change the lighting in our warehouse. We just bought it, I mentioned, and the lighting was not very efficient. And there was a kind of lighting that was greener and much more energy efficient, okay? And it cost us $140,000 to do it, instead of doing something else that might have been a higher priority for a different kind of enterprise. But for us, it was pretty much a no-brainer. It was compelling. It was in our mission. We had an obligation to do that. If we go back to our commitment, the decision became easy. So even when it's a little bit heated discussion, because I assure you there are folks who would rather have automated picking technology to pick orders, okay, because it would have a greater impact on our business. But when we look at the totality of our mission, okay, more energy efficient lighting clearly went in.
Let me ask a follow-up to that question. Some organizations that take used products in the U.S. and just ship those products overseas have been accused of just basically exporting garbage to these countries and ended up in other countries' landfills. Like you indicated, you go through a filtering or a screening process. I'm just curious, how do you determine in advance before you actually ship books to, let's say, Africa or somewhere? These are actually, because I presume they're also written in English. For the most part, how do you assure yourself that these are actually going to some useful purpose in those countries and not just going to end up in storage and boxes and landfills?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I've been in a lot of, here in the United States and elsewhere, I visit with a lot of folks who are nonprofits who process textiles and other goods, and they ship them all over the place and they end up in landfills. We actually spent the time, the effort, and the energy to develop technology that we call a bidding engine. Okay, it's highest and best use. Bidding is not necessarily an economic bidding, it's a bidding for highest and best use. And it takes every ISBN or individual SKU, we'll call it, that's associated with a book. And so when Books for Africa, who is someone who we have provided over $25 million worth of funding to, and ship container, probably 10, 12 containers of books a year to, we ask them to profile what it is they want. Okay, they tell us what they want, or we can give them an API, an interface into our technology where they can actually say, I want these ISBNs, and I want this number, this quantity. And then as it goes down our line and the barcode gets scanned on that book, it looks at that and says, is that the highest and best use for that? If it is, it puts it in there. If it's not on their list, it doesn't go into their shipment, okay? And by doing that, we make sure that books don't end up where they're not wanted. Books for Africa then facilitates those getting not only moved to Africa, although we fund it, not only getting them moved to Africa, but where they're going, what schools are going into, room for read into libraries, et cetera, in Asia, and feed the children. We give children's books. We have age profiles that they want. Some of them go in backpacks and get handed out at homeless shelters to children of certain ages. And we can sort that out so they get exactly, without any hesitation, exactly what they're asking.
We have a question over on this.
Wow, I've been following Better World Books, and this is a more compelling story every time somebody from your company comes and talks to us, so thank you. I actually have 4 questions, but I'll only ask one as long as there's another question. If not, I'll just keep going on. My first question is the broadest, and it has to do with Ben & Jerry's becoming a B Corp. And this was a really big thing to me, watching the movement. I don't know if you, in the movement, saw it as a big thing that, I don't know if the students know the story of it's being acquired by Unilever, which is a Dutch corporation, I believe, and the whole story of why they would, in 2012, finally get their B Corp status.
Yeah, it is interesting and it is very unique. So the nature of B Corps have tended to be private companies, for one thing, okay, and standalone entities. And the reason for that is that when you go and there is no social enterprise exchange today, there's talks of one being created. Most people buy stock in a company because they want to try and maximize their return based on their risk level and their risk tolerance, okay? In the case of Ben & Jerry's was a private company bought by a conglomerate, Unilever, and is a wholly owned subsidiary of Unilever and is functioning under that umbrella, the umbrella of public enterprise, okay? And they are the first wholly owned sub of a publicly traded company to become a B corporation. Again, happened very recently. I give all the credit in the world to Jay and the folks at B Lab for making that happen. There's several things that have happened in the last year that are tremendous, and several things. We'll probably have our first public standalone B Corp before this calendar year is over, which is surprising. And it is monumental. It is true to who they are, okay? And for those of you who don't know much about the Ben & Jerry's story, Ben & Jerry's had really several social enterprise stories within it. So it employed prison workers, or ex-cons, okay, that most folks didn't know about. And they were very committed to that. When Unilever acquired them, they saw that as risk, reputational risk. And they saw that as risk to the customers potentially coming into the stores and non-ex-convict customers. And so they got out of that. And they were moving Ben & Jerry's away from that core social enterprise. And so they were viewed within social enterprise as the sellout. When I interviewed for this job, you got to understand, I've never worked in social enterprise before. Okay, I was a senior executive of corporate America for part of my career. I came from JP Morgan Chase's private equity arm into here. Okay, and so the concept was, hey, when I was interviewed by the board and they recruited me, they said, you know, here's the deal, okay? No matter what happens while you're here, okay, we are a social enterprise, true to our mission, never negotiable, okay? What Ben & Jerry's did, they basically said, here it is, here's the case study of Ben & Jerry's. What Ben & Jerry's did is exactly what will not happen here, okay? If we're offered, just pull numbers from the sky, if we're offered $500 million, okay, but we've got to abandon our social mission, or we're offered $100 million and the social mission stays intact, it's a no-brainer. This is what the board's going to do. We're going to take the $100 million and we're going to thank them and let them go elsewhere, okay? And we're thrilled to death that Ben & Jerry's has come back to their roots. We're thrilled to death that they're going back to embracing that which they stood for that made them successful, and they've come back to the fold and the heritage, and it's a milestone. It's clearly a milestone. And hopefully there'll be others to follow. Okay, but you can be sure that for us, compromising our social mission just is not in the cards.
And you have a question back here.
Follow-up question, kind of the same type of trend, but from the nonprofit side. Have you seen or do you anticipate any nonprofits that see the advantages of being a B Corp and better able to accomplish their philanthropic mission by adopting some of your principles of a normal C Corp?
Yeah, great question, and there are some nonprofits who are amongst the B Corp community. I will tell you that I'm a real believer in for-profit social enterprise versus some of what nonprofits are doing today. And there's a heavy dependence on subsidies, governmental subsidies, grants, et cetera, et cetera. And what we've done is we've demonstrated that you can create this ecosystem of commerce that is not dependent upon, you mentioned before, the tax benefits. We get 0 tax benefits, okay? So when we put a number up there of $13+ million that we've given, that does not include any credit for a single book. So that doesn't say that, oh, well, the book would have sold for $9. We donated it, and so $9 is in that $13 million. We take 0 credit for a book that we donate in our financial performance. And we also take 0 tax deduction for that book. Okay, so, you know, when we look at it, and I as a taxpayer look at it, and I look at a nonprofit, I subsidize that nonprofit because that nonprofit basically if they're in our business, they gather those goods by someone being able to take a tax write-off, so they pay less tax, and therefore the government is subsidizing that. In our case, that's not the case. When someone donates a book to us, they don't get a tax credit, they don't get a write-off. And when we donate that book, we do not pay less taxes because we made that donation. We do not take it off as a charitable donation. It is a cost of doing business inside of our environment. If we ship the book, the cost of shipping is a cost of doing business. There was no cost. We burden, the cost of that donated book then gets burdened into the book we sell, okay? So we actually are we're a healthy enterprise without being a burden on society. I think it's a model that a lot of folks would benefit from, and we'd love to see more and more folks look at it that way. The reality is, every time we go out there and we go to a landlord and try and convince them to put a drop box on their property, or we go to a grocery store chain and say that we want to put drop boxes in all their parking lots, or we go to a library, okay, we have to explain what social enterprise is. And because we're a for-profit, their tendency is to paint us in a negative light versus a not-for-profit being in a positive light. And so we have to overcome it the other way at this stage of the game. Hopefully, we're not too far away from that term.
And this will be the last question. It really deals more with your personal journey. My own curiosity about this, and that as you've indicated in your background, you clearly come out of the for-profit world. I was like Morgan, your own 2 startups, and now you're more in a social business type of environment. But I'm wondering, have you always thought this way? When you were at Morgan and you were in your startups, did you have this sort of social conscious in terms of focusing on the planet and the people part? Or were you somewhat more focused on the profit part and somehow there was some trigger event that sort of altered your thinking? I'm just sort of curious in terms of your personal
great question. Yeah, I think it's a great question. And the answer is, I wish I could sit here and say I've always lived to have an impact on society. That would not be true. So I'm not going to go down that path. The reality is, I was trained when I went to school. There was no class like this. There was no program like this. Okay, it was all about shareholder value, building shareholder value, and enterprise value. Okay, and how you go about doing that, right? And so I'm thrilled to death that, you know, when I used to have this kind of a discussion 10 years ago, it was about how much shareholder value I have built throughout my career. Had absolutely nothing to do with societal value, none whatsoever. I built a company. I had wonderful, wonderful occasion to take it public and ring the opening bell on the New York Stock Exchange. And that was a milestone. That's, you know, was, I guess, what I call the second leg of my race. The first one is I started a company from scratch. It was bought by the company that at that time had the largest market capitalization in the world, called GE, General Electric. And built my second company, okay, and took it public on the New York Stock Exchange rang the opening bell. I said, nothing gets better than this, okay? It did get better. 4 years later, we sold it to a company here in Alpharetta called Choice Point, which some of you may have heard of, may not have heard of. And we sold it at that time for an unprecedented number, almost 7 times revenue. Okay, it's a publicly traded company. Pretty good return for shareholders and stakeholders. Pretty proud moment. Made a lot of investors very happy, and created tremendous shareholder value. Had the opportunity just back in 2000 to buy back Choice Point for LexisNexis for $4.2 billion. Okay, great milestone. But the greatest pride I got was when I decided, you know what, I didn't need to play this rat race anymore. I was going to spend a lot more time with my kids. And started a charity in Alpharetta called the North Metro Miracle League to build a barrier-free baseball field to break down not only the physical barriers of allowing kids in wheelchairs to play ball, okay, but to break down the societal barriers of taking able-bodied kids and pairing them up with children with disabilities, okay, to break down those phobias, okay, that intimidation, and saw what a difference it made. We raised in a very short period of time, you know, a few $1 million, built this facility, and today still run programming on it, but donated it to the city of Alpharetta. And that was the moment in which I got my greatest pride. Okay, and so I had gotten to the point, and my wife is in the room, and she can testify, where it's not about money. You know, money is a great thing, and money buys a whole lot of things. And they say money doesn't buy happiness. Yeah, if you're a happy person, money does a good job of enhancing it. If you're not happy, it may not. I don't know, I'm happy. So, but that sense of pride that comes from making a difference in those lives for me was definitely very, very impactful. And I decided if I was going to go back to work, it wasn't going to be to just take a job. There were some challenges that had to be there. And to me, this would be the ultimate trifecta. And I would like to see us compete on the social enterprise side with the best nonprofits out there, okay? The folks who do the most good in society. On the environmental side, I want to be as green and clean as we can possibly be with the best of them. Didn't recognize them, okay? Much of that before I got here, I can't take credit for it, but continue that legacy. But on the profit side, I don't want to compete with social enterprise. I don't want to compete with Wall Street and Main Street. Okay? I want to deliver the kind of margins while doing good, while being green, okay, so that none of those stakeholders have to sacrifice because we embrace it all. Okay? When I do that, then I can retire with a good conscience, knowing that I've actually accomplished something.
Thanks for coming to Georgia Tech today.